tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is artist Charles Sherman and musician, author Annette Kaufman. Annette Kaufman, a pianist and an author, was born in Chicago and raised in various states. She said, I remember going to school on 125th Street in New York, but we didn't ask you what school it was, did we? Did you go to college?
No, I didn't. I went to my Institute of Musical Art in New York, and I met my husband when I was still a student, and we became engaged, and we got married, and we went to Paris for our honeymoon, and I studied piano in Paris, and my husband played with some concerts with my teacher, Madame Blancard, and Madame Blancard said to me, Mrs. Kaufman, you shouldn't pay for lessons anymore. You should just study with your husband. He's a superb musician. And that's what I did.
Oh, so you got married very, very young to
Yes.
Louis Kaufman.
That's right.
Who was a great solo violinist.
Yes.
And a concertmaster.
Yes, for about 500 Hollywood films.
I know, that's so great.
It's fascinating how this all happened.
But you were in Paris as a young girl. How did you leave your family and go away?
Well, my father and mother came to New York to meet Louis, gave permission for us to be engaged, and when he had an opportunity to play with the Portland Symphony, he thought it would be a good thing if we got married immediately, so I could go to Europe and see some of the wonderful cities that he had seen.
Oh.
And so that's what my parents decided to do, to help us. And they gave us the money that a wedding would cost, and we used that to go to Paris, and I studied at the École Normale with Madame Jean Blancard.
Did you speak French?
Yes, I do.
Did you before?
Yes, I studied French in America.
Oh, you did. So you were like one step ahead.
Yes, I was.
Did you come from a musical family?
No, I didn't. I came from a mercantile family, but my mother always wanted to play piano, and so when I was a little girl, that was in North Dakota, I began studying at a Catholic nunnery. It was the only piano teacher there.
And so she got you taking lessons right away, and obviously, did they think you were a genius?
Oh, no, not at all.
No?
It was just the thing that every little girl wanted to do at that time. Everybody played piano, no matter where you were born in America.
But
It
yours
was a social instrument.
But yours went much further. I mean, you accompanied your husband.
Yes, I did, and that's all I wanted to do. I was very modest.
Well, did you have to practice more or know more about what he was doing?
Yes.
Because of accompanying him?
Yes. I thought that would be a wonderful life, that I could travel with him and be useful.
Well, did he play with orchestras around the world? And then were you the pianist then at that time when he played with the orchestras?
Well, when he played with orchestras, I was just in the audience listening.
Oh, that's what I wondered. So someone else accompanied him, or?
The orchestra did.
Oh, the orchestra.
Mm-hmm. And the conductor.
But if there was a part for the piano with the orchestra?
Then I would come in and play.
Then you would. That's what I was wondering.
If there was a piano part.
And then how long did you spend time in Europe? Was it a long time?
Well, we went there many times after we were married, but my husband had played in vaudeville when he was a little boy, 10 years old, and he was born in Portland, Oregon, of Romanian parents. And we came to Los Angeles right after our marriage, and we'd had a honeymoon in Europe of a short duration, and we played on the radio here. And it was a curious thing. We played at 10:15 to 10:30 at night after a popular news broadcast.
Just the two of you?
Yes, just the two of us. And we thought people turned off their radios when you they heard the news. And so what happened is one morning the phone rang and a voice said, "I'm Mickey Whalen, the contractor at MGM, and we're making a picture, The Merry Widow, with Ernest Lubitsch as the producer. And he heard you last night and he would like you to play." So my husband said, "I'm a serious musician. I came here just to teach and to play some concerts." And he said, "I don't think I'd fit in. I don't think you'd like me, and I don't think I'd like the work." And Mr. Whalen said, "Mr. Kaufman will play you double union scale." He thought my husband was being very wily, asking for more money. And so my husband said, I really don't think I would like the work. And he said, "Well, look, Mr. Kaufman, why don't you come and try it? If we don't like you, we won't ask you back. And if you don't like us, you don't have to come back." So my husband thought, well, that sounded fair enough, and he would try it. And he went and played at MGM, and it seemed to please people. And he thought it over as he was driving home. They worked from something like 10 o'clock in the morning to about 3 o'clock the next morning, with an hour off for lunch and an hour off for dinner. And he said, "This is really could be our, golden bowl at the end of the rainbow. Would be a wonderful opportunity. We could do whatever we wanted anyhow. They don't work every day." And so for about 14 years, he played in all the films of Max Steiner and of Alfred Newman and of Franz Waxman and of Erich Wolfgang Korngold. And
did he write the scores too? Who was writing the scores?
They wrote them.
They wrote the scores.
Max Steiner wrote his scores.
Oh, he did.
Miklos Rozsa, and so did Korngold.
And then he played. Did he bring an orchestra in to direct when he was concertmaster?
No, they had orchestras that were hired by the studios.
By the studio. And then what did he? And then he played solo. He played the violin.
Or sometimes he even was the concertmaster and led the orchestras in the string orchestra.
Were they ever on screen?
Not really.
It was always
done
just the
after the
background
picture was
movie.
done. I can tell you one fascinating story that happened. They made a picture that was called Of Human Bondage at RKO, and they just put some ordinary soundtracks that had previously been recorded for the accompaniment to the film. And nobody could understand the Mon story because it was a hateful waitress who was terrible to a poor man who was crippled. And they realized that their whole investment would be lost. And they called in Max to do a score. And he put people into an emotional vice with the power of that music. And it became a tremendous hit. It made Bette Davis as a star, was her first starring role.
So that music was so important in the film, wasn't it?
Yes, and it made Leslie Howard, who played the poor, unfortunate cripple, as the star, and it made Mon famous for writing good stories, and they made a lot of his stories later for films.
It's interesting because that was starting in 1937, I guess. Is that when he went?
Started in about 1935.
Oh, even earlier than that.
Yes, even earlier than that. And then along came a chance to make classic recordings in Hollywood. There was a symphony founded in Santa Monica that was called the Santa Monica Symphony. It still exists. And he recorded works such as the Cacciatorian Concerto to a new company in New York. And they wanted Louis there was going to be a strike of the Musicians' Union in 1948. And they wanted Louis to record something that would be a small orchestra that he wouldn't cost very much. And so he said, well, CBS asked me to play some concertos of Vivaldi.
Oh, that's when he introduced Vivaldi.
That's how it all happened.
I didn't want to forget that. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
It was the first one, right?
Yes, he made the first recording of the Vivaldi Four Seasons. And that record got the Grand Prix de Disque in France. It was selected as one of the best recordings of the year by the New York Times. And in 2002, 9 years after he died, it was voted into the Grammy Hall of Fame.
Oh, so that's what went in the Hall of Fame. His recording of it.
Yes, it was his recording.
Well, there's no use asking you why you wrote a book because you have so many stories. And this is called A Fiddler's Tale.
That's right. Published by the University of Wisconsin.
And it's going into second
edition.
printing.
Yes, we're awfully happy about that. Actually,
And this is your husband, Louis
that's right.
Kaufman.
It's a photograph by Man Ray, who became a very famous photographer.
Yes, was he famous then?
Not as famous. He was here as a refugee from France.
Did he? Oh, I was going to say, did he take the picture in
No,
L.A.
he took
or
that
did he in Paris?
He took that in Paris when he went back.
Well, I have one picture of you in Paris with him. Let's see if I can find it in here.
We have a picture with Milton Avery.
Here.
When my husband was...
I have this.
Oh, yes,
So
that's
you
where we were
and
in
these
Paris
are the
on
two
our
of you in
honeymoon.
Paris.
That was Louis in front of the Arc de Triomphe, and that was me in front of the Paris Opera. That was
Which
our
is so
honeymoon.
great because, you know, those things all look the same now. It doesn't matter when you were there, does it?
Absolutely.
So all those stories are involved in this book.
Yes.
And did you write this book?
Actually, Louis wrote most of the book, but he didn't live to finish it. And I put it in the proper order because he wrote things at various times, and I put it in the proper sequence.
So you obviously you lived it.
Yes.
Here we have a portrait of Louis too in the book. I think
next
the book
to one
is
of the paintings that he bought, which is kind of amusing, by David
Picasso?
Berliuk. No, it's by David Berliuk. He was a Russian futurist, and if you notice, he has fish for eyes, a bottle for a nose, and a ship for a mouth.
I couldn't see it that close. Now I can see it all, yeah. So, but he was also, the two of you were the first people to buy Milton Avery's work.
That's right. He bought the first painting that Milton ever sold.
I have this
And,
catalog
yes.
because I saw that Milton Avery show at the Phillips Collection
Wasn't it
in Washington.
marvelous?
Yes, and I kept wondering who that beautiful woman was. And the beautiful woman was you because there were these portraits.
That's the portrait
This is
he
the
painted
portrait I
of me in
love.
1944. That was my work uniform. I was very modest, and
You played the piano in this?
Yes, I was going to say I had a long black velvet skirt, and I had a black velvet blouse, and a big pink tie, because I didn't think it looked nice to see women's legs at the piano,
I
or their
see.
bare arms or their bare backs. I like to be covered up.
We showed that portrait of you.
That was
but
when
this
Milton
is
was
when they were
painting it.
being
That's right.
when it was being painted, and it's so bizarre to have your husband come in. I looked at this photograph at the museum, and I said, "Why would this musician come in and play?" Because I didn't know you or know
Joan,
it.
excuse me for interrupting you, but you were the only person that was aware that that was not a possible photograph. Nobody else has ever noticed that. You were the only one. And we happened to be in Milton's studio in New York, and there was a very good photographer who was the wife of a painter by the name of Wallace Putnam, and she was painting some of Milton's she was photographing some of Milton's paintings, and she said Louis was practicing in another room because we were in New York because he was going to play a concert, and she said, "Louis, come in here for a minute. You'll make a better picture. It'll
Yeah, because it's great." And then this is you with the portrait. I want to be sure to show this too.
That's right. That's me in my work uniform.
I love it. You must have been beautiful on stage.
Well,
Going
I tried
out,
to
looking
be
in that
useful.
pretty pink bow. And there's so many great stories in here. I can't wait to continue tackling it and looking. I'm glad that I got to see this Milton Avery show and that it was yours.
Also was happenstance. The show was assembled by the Syracuse University. They were interested in Avery, the Averys that we have, and it was shown in Annapolis. And when it was after being shown in New York, those are some of the Duncan Phillips ones. Eliza not Rathburg, her name is Rathbone, came to see the show, and she thought it would be nice to show it at the Phillips Museum. And those are two paintings that belong to Mr. Phillips.
He
was
loved
a
Avery,
wonderful
too.
conductor. He was a collector.
Collector. He was a great collector. And we ran out of time.
What a
can't
shame.
show, I know, but this is you coming to
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, and I'm going to say goodbye with this.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you, Annette. And don't go away. We'll be right back with Charles Sherman, who did these beautiful sculptures on the set. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm here with artist Charles Sherman. He was born and raised in New Jersey. He attended the Philadelphia College of Art, but didn't spend much time in art school. Why didn't you spend much time in art school?
Well, I had other interests at the time. I was not passionately consumed by art. I was consumed by sports, women, and the stock market.
Is that right?
Yes.
When did you decide then to study art?
Well, I really totally turned my life inside out in 1981 when I realized I was a complete failure in business. I thought, okay, I failed in business. Now is the time to just turn my life inside out and become an artist. So I started to read every art history book and join every arts organization and go to art workshops every day, and that was 1981.
Is that right?
Yes.
Well, actually, when you did go to art school for a very short time, like you said, that must have remained in the back of your mind. I mean, you must have at one point thought you were going to do that.
Yeah, as a child, I was always doing art, and I won awards, and it just wasn't in my heart at the time. So I just kind of like let go of it, and and
you do go to museums. You say, what do you take away when you go to museums, or what did you take away when you went to see all this different art before you actually got started?
Well, once I decided to take a course in art in 1981, I just didn't think that I was going to really get so serious, but I did a few watercolors, and I got a lot of encouragement from my close friends that I loved and loved me, and then I just went for it. And so I started studying, rather than the art schools, I studied the lives and techniques of the masters and going to museums around the world and just looked at the paintings and figured out what they did.
That's how you became a part of the art world.
Yeah.
Were you were able to interchange with living artists, I suppose?
I joined every arts organization in the city, and I became friends with many local artists, and it was my whole life overnight.
Did you go to their studios and spend time with them?
Yes, like mostly unknown artists, and artists like Arnold Schifrin, who was known in Los Angeles.
Arnold Schifrin's great painter.
Yeah, he was a great
painter. So you were in the studios watching them work. Were they willing to share their techniques with you?
Yeah, I mean, if they weren't, then I was out of there. I just kind of like went through with the path. I just went with the flow of least resistance and just learned from anybody that inspired me, and I just really took it all in.
So you were working with painters, it looks like, or going
Mostly
into painters' studios.
Yeah.
Do you paint?
Yes.
Oh, you do paint?
Yes, I'm a painter, but I mean, I started out as a painter and then went to conceptual art and started out abstract, and then I had ideas for realism, and I did realistic paintings and anatomically correct sculptures.
So you could do all of that.
Basically, yes. Basically, in the past 20-some years since I got totally into art, since I really committed myself to this life, I really was educated, but not in the university system, but being mentored, always looking for somebody that I can learn from.
And did people come into your studio and help you solve problems, say on the canvas or painting?
Sometimes, but yeah, I was always looking for something to learn from. I'd have a question and I'd look at a book or look at a master.
So you figure it out yourself?
And just try to figure it out myself, yeah. So I owe a lot to, the 20th century masters mostly. Those were my heroes.
When you finished painting, how did you get into clay? Because it's pretty different.
Well,
it's so tactile.
It's totally different. Well, as an adult, I was studying ancient cultures and early mythologies. So the images that I was painting was, I was painting fertility goddesses because that's what I was studying. And then I stumbled across the creation stories of Genesis. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. This is the creation story of my people. So then I started studying Judaism with rabbis, and then I got some ideas to do biblical themes based on the stories.
But that sounds like painting to me.
Well, these were sculptures.
They were sculptures.
Right.
That's what I know.
Yeah,
You're taking me into the sculpture part, into
The paintings were mostly abstract paintings in the very beginning.
Yeah, but we're moving into the clay work now? What kind of
okay.
sculptures were they? Out of
Biblical,
what?
well, the sculptures were clay, but then they were always transformed into bronze. So I did a series called the Bible series.
Oh, so you did do bronze.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
100 sculptures in bronze.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, based on my interpretation of biblical stories, which were sometimes very provocative and went against not just the Jewish theologians, but also the Christian theologians. And
But those were shown too, weren't they?
They were shown all over the world, actually. They were shown in New York, and I even had a show at the Chanlu Gallery in Taipei, Taiwan,
Yeah.
and on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills.
Right, that's great. So were they big pieces?
The sculptures were, well, average size bronzes about this big.
And how long did it take you to complete that? So many pieces.
Well, it took me an average of a couple months to do one bronze sculpture.
I would think, yeah. So then from bronze, how'd you get into clay?
Well, when you do bronze is more product oriented. So, you have the idea from the very beginning. And I did so many sculptures in bronze, and and then one day I was ready to do my next Bible series piece, and this voice came over me and said, "Charles, chill out. Nobody cares what you think. Nobody cares what you have to say. Nobody cares about your ideas. Just relax and let me take over." And this voice, his name was Arthur.
Do we call him Arthur?
Arthur Theodore Gates. And he took over, and all of a sudden the clay started to build itself. And it's like I had nothing to do with it. I didn't have any idea where it was going, but they turned out to be abstract, figurative, kind of like whimsical sculptures. And then that just kept developing and developing.
Was that you in
developing.
another life, do you think? Was Arthur you in another life?
Arthur came from no place. No, I don't know where Arthur came
The
from.
one thing that's so interesting about your pieces is that they're hollow.
The rings are hollow clay.
And that's
right.
not ordinary, is it?
Well, this ring, for instance, I don't believe anyone's figured out how to make a hollow ring before, but I just kind of was playing around with rings, and it developed very naturally how to make a hollow ring. So this ring is hollow. Clay tends to collapse when you make rings. So this is very, very strong. There's no structural cracks in it.
Did you have to have scientific formulas to do this?
Actually, I flunked geometry.
I'm wondering.
And I flunked arts and crafts. So I use no ruler, I use no calculator, and no extruder. It's just totally intuitive. All this work is completely intuitive.
And the red one?
The red one is solid, but once they reach a certain size in scale, they have to be hollow, because when you fire clay, it explodes if the clay is too thick.
This is fired, is it?
Yes, these are all completed.
And did you make these glazes?
I didn't mix this particular glaze myself. This came from Laguna. It's a standard
Laguna.
Blue? Yeah, it's a standard ongo, which means colored clay. It's liquid clay that you paint on. Colored liquid clay is
the brown
ongo.
part.
The brown part is the natural color of the clay.
The brown is a natural color, and the blue is another natural thing that you paint on?
It's like liquid clay that has dye in it. It's called ongo.
It's beautiful. Then do you fire that again?
No, it's a one-firing process,
I
which makes
see.
it very interesting.
So then is that the reason it doesn't crack?
No, because it usually, if a firing cracks, it usually cracks the first time. And the reason it cracks is because you fire it up too fast, or the clay is too thick, or it has structural cracks in the building of it.
Show us these pieces.
Okay, now these are not hollow, these are solid rings. And the rings, actually, I'm going to show this one first. This is actually based on...
Could you hold it that way so yeah.
Okay, this is based on the Mobius strip. Now, Mobius was a German mathematician who designed a form in 1861 where there's no beginning and no end. So if you pull your around around any one plane,
it goes back
it comes back to where you started. And that's what all these sculptures are based Okay, so this is
You
four.
put it on the table next
This is
to you.
four-sided here, and this is a linked ring. And the interesting thing about these three rings here,
The same
is that
form?
it's the identical same form. It's a Mobius type structure. By the way, this is the same process that M.C. Escher worked with his
yeah.
whole life. It's like it's the form where there's no beginning and no end, except he figured it out using math, and I don't know how to do it
And
using
you
math.
did this.
This is just all intuitive, just forming the clay and twisting the clay and putting it together.
Is this all one piece of sculpture?
I started out with 3 pieces of sculpture. Yes, this is one piece of sculpture.
Oh, that's one
but
piece, and then the other piece is a separate piece?
Yeah.
Because they work so well together.
Well, they do work well together
Yeah.
because the forms work well.
Right.
But when you put this down, no matter how you put it down, it becomes a unique piece of sculpture in an infinite amount
so it
of
makes
ways.
its own. It makes its own.
It makes its
form.
own form in an infinite amount of ways. So that's interesting. That's what's interesting about these. Right now I'm in the process of making much larger rings, and it's just 3 rings. And one of the things that's interesting about,
Won't they break?
well, it's clay. They won't break like this, but if you drop them on concrete, they'll
Yeah.
break. Otherwise, they'll last longer than bronze because bronze
beautiful.
rusts. Thank you.
And then these 2 little pieces, because we don't have much time left, but these 2 pieces here, because they're beautiful too. They
These
look
are
like
the
the
similar.
same.
These are similar, except the some of it's wider. There's more variation in this form here.
Do you use a lot of glazing?
Actually, no, because my forms are mostly sculptural forms, and
I see.
glazing is used mostly with ceramic pots. But yes, glazing is an important part of it. But these pieces can be transformed into bronze or lucite or rubber or porcelain or anything. So this is more about sculpture than it is about glazing, even though I'm developing glazing.
Oh,
right now.
thank you, Charles.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for watching. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, 90017. See you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles.